Hi everybody, sorry to cut your coffee break short. I know that after so many great talks, your minds are probably a little bit overwhelmed. But I hope that they're not too overwhelmed, because now we're going to have a deep dive into some deep philosophical bullshit. So, I need some mental energy from everybody. Yes, that's the spirit. So, that's my spirit right now, even if it doesn't show, because for me, being here is very special. In 2019, I was in Verona once again for the very first time. And little did I know that this was going to be one of the last Ruby conferences I would attend in person. This is actually the first Ruby conference that I attend in person since 2019. So the world was kind of fucked up in the last few years. Should I moderate myself or? Okay. Because I have a very foul tongue, or so I've been told. So yes, we had to endure a pandemic and some other nasty stuff. Some things have changed in the last 4 years, like Ruby 3 has actually landed. You all know that I was kind of skeptical about the delivery date. Other even less believable things have happened, like Manchester City actually won the Champions League. Messi finally won the World Cup. I didn't see this coming. And more importantly, I know, is there somebody from Napoli here? No? This was, congratulations, mate. I know you've waited for a very long time. Miracles continue. You know, if somebody was here, this was the former Prime Minister of Bulgaria, Boyko Borisov, who was considered eternal, but he's no longer the Prime Minister of Bulgaria. So it's true what they say, impossible is nothing. But other things haven't really changed. Like, my name is still Bozhidar, and people are still struggling with it in English and in other languages, so you can think of me as Buck. That's cool. I also tried to explore alternatives of Twitter, but I miserably failed. So I'm still on Twitter. I'm still from Sofia, Bulgaria, and it's a wild place still. I still work at TopTal, but we did change our logo, and I forgot to update this slide. So please do not rat me out to the marketing department. They are vicious. I still work a lot on various open source projects, and you probably, if you know who I am, you probably know me for my work on the Ruby and Rails style guides, and as the author of Rubocop. I really enjoyed the morning session by Alessandro. It is so nice to be in the audience and to listen to somebody else talk about Rubocop. Pretty cool. And because I like to announce some cool new feature at every talk I do, here's a sneak peek into the next release. We are going to have native LSP support in Rubocop. It's going to spin an LSP server, and it's going to be a lot faster than it ever was. So I think that's a small victory, right? I had a lot of free time on my hands, especially in 2020 and 2021. So I indulged in a lot of Netflix TV series. I actually subscribed to every streaming service that exists, probably not the best use of my time, but I also broke my personal blogging record on both my blogs. Don't ask me why I didn't merge them. So, you know, for the next pandemic, if you need reading material, some ideas. And the important stuff, back in Italy, a country with which I feel connected at multiple levels. So, you know, I really like a good Aperol Spritz, and I like a good Negroni, and I like a good Italian wine with light appetizers. I like a good pasta. I like a good tiramisu, and afterwards you need a good digestivo or two. Somebody might think that I have a drinking issue, and probably I do, because this is how last conference in Verona ended up. I honestly don't remember how I got so much money, but I remember how I got this grappa. And another thing that is kind of constant and nothing really can change is my love for Ruby. I have been doing Ruby for so long that I can't even remember. Maybe it was just before they released Ruby 1.8, and I remember that Rails was still a hot new thing and people were excited about it. It was like crypto in 2005. So today I'd like to speak a little bit about the underlying philosophy behind Ruby, because in the words of Matz, our glorious leader, I think a programming language should have a philosophy of helping our thinking. And so Ruby's focus is on productivity and the joy of programming. If you feel comfortable with Ruby's philosophy, that means Ruby is your language. So that sounds really wise, because Matz is wise. I don't expect anything else from him, but it's not very clear to me. What exactly is this philosophy in practical terms? It's not clear to some of my biggest fans as well. So let's debunk this. Let's analyze the philosophy behind Ruby. First, a few dictionary definitions, as usual. What is Ruby? A noun with two meanings, a precious stone consisting of corundum. I have to tell you that I don't know this English word myself, but sounds important. In color varieties varying from deep crimson or purple to pale rose. Sounds nice. A programming language optimized for programmer happiness. Creed, a more complicated term. Another noun, a system of religious belief, a faith. More popular from the Mandalorian, I guess, in recent days, and this is the way. I've noticed that creed in modern society is often confused with another noun, motto. Motto is a short sentence or phrase chosen as encapsulating the beliefs or ideals of an individual, family, or institution. And I want to illustrate this with a few examples. So you probably know that Perl was one of the spiritual inspirations for Matz in the early days of Ruby. And Perl has this famous motto: there's more than one way to do it. Because really, in Perl, there are endless ways in which you can write a piece of code. Python has a very different motto, several mottos. One of them is that there are many ways to do it, but one is objectively better than the others. I do like the Zen of Python. Beautiful is better than ugly, explicit is better than implicit, simple is better than complex. Good stuff. The rest is very long, so I'm not just going to read it. If you ask various people, Ruby's motto is a programmer's best friend. Ruby is optimized for programmer happiness. Ruby has the nicest community in the world. You know, but what does really mean? You can ask again different people. They can tell you, oh, it's a dynamic open source programming language with a focus on all sorts of things. It's cool, easy to read, write, for whatever this means. But I think in reality, it's a lot more nuanced than this. And I always like to think about culture, because I pretend that I'm a programmer, but in reality, I'm an engineering manager. And if you're an engineering manager, the word that you're constantly thinking about is culture. Yes, that's the management buzzword number one. So Clojure is explained in all sorts of ways, but I think that the best possible definition of Clojure is that Clojure is the behaviors that you reward and punish instead of the things that you claim that you value, but you actually don't give a fuck about. So really, we are defined as organizations, as individuals, by our actions and not by our words. It's simple, but it's also true. And if we transplant this to the idea of create, some examples of create. Another programming language that I like is Clojure. And Clojure is known for really valuing stability. Like Clojure has never broken backwards compatibility since its initial release in 2018. I think this is an instance of the actions of the team behind Clojure really being aligned with what they say. Also, Clojure says that it's preferable to have a small core, essential yet easy to comprehend a standard library. And they also reflected this in their actions. There have been fewer commits in the entire history of Clojure than in 6 weeks, more or less, 8 weeks, let's say, of Rust development. One release of Ruby typically accounts for 5,000 plus commits. And almost every release breaks something in a subtle way. So clearly, stability, for instance, is not an element of Ruby's create. We speak a lot about the happiness, but what is this happiness exactly? I can tell you what happiness in Ruby is for me in a nutshell. When I saw this snippet of code a long time ago, I was like, fuck this shit. It rocks. Because really, they pushed object-oriented programming to the limit. You can invoke methods on something like numeric types, which was rather uncommon for performance reasons back in the day. And it's beautiful. And that's all I have for you. Thanks for your attention. Okay, you don't believe me. So I'll continue because there is always one more thing. Experience has taught me that happiness is something very subjective. Like, if you ask me, happiness is programming in the greatest text editor in the world, and it's not Vim. Or happiness is having a bunch of parentheses in your code, but you know, that's just me. I can watch reviews about mechanical watches all day long, but I cannot endure 30 minutes of a tech talk at home at this stage of my life. So, so that's just me. And me has been changing through the years. At some point, I thought that assembly was the greatest programming language, and you weren't a good programmer if you needed something high order like C. I thought that C was for people who pretended to know to program. Now, in hindsight, I'm like, okay, this guy was full of bullshit, but maybe he got wiser with age. So happiness is something individual, and I think Matz realized this early on. That's why I think he borrowed some of Perl's ethos that there is more than one way to do it, made it one of the mottos of Ruby. And this is reflected in much of Ruby's design. Like, in most languages, it's very uncommon to have several names for the same method within the core library. People would say that this is confusing, and they might be right. But in Ruby, it's very common. A lot of methods that are used daily have 2, 3 names within the standard library. And you have to find the one that resonates with you. Maybe you're coming from Smalltalk background and you really like the names collect, inject, detect, select. Maybe you're coming from scheme background or some other language that used map, filter. So you probably are not going to be happy using the Smalltalk terminology, and that's fine. You have to make a choice. You have to decide what makes you happy. And I've decided that for me, for instance, my preferred set of methods would be this one. You have single and double quoted string literals, even if you don't really need them, because they're useful, and we need to have bike shedding topics, right? Like, do you know that double quoted literals have this amazing advantage in some use case? We have different hash literals, and the situation there becomes more complicated and more complicated. And that's fine. Like, I know that people, especially those coming from JavaScript background, really like, for instance, the changes that were made in Ruby 1.9. Do we really need this? No. But for people to be happier, some members of the community, it was useful. And I think that all of the features that are often labeled as controversial in Ruby, like flip-flops, for loops, etc., are useful to some people and are making them happy. I always remember the 5-year long discussions to remove flip-flops. Like, we are getting rid of them, they're super confusing, nobody uses them. It's approved by Matz. And then one Japanese developer says, I actually like them for one particular use case. And Matz says, okay, one person really likes this feature, so it stays. This is what happiness is. But again, because this is very subjective, it's kind of hard to distribute the happiness uniformly. Like, I always think about the things that make me happy in programming. I like simple and consistent syntax. I prefer, these days, functional style of programming. And I believe you witnessed today a nice demonstration of why a functional style of programming yields clearer code, subjectively speaking. I like a standard library that comes with batteries included, and I don't have to wonder how to work with regular expressions and upcase a string, because there are languages that are really bare bones. I like backwards compatibility. I like development tooling that makes me more productive. So in Ruby, I really appreciate that we have a very mature ecosystem in this regard. Like, Ruby Gems is great, Rake is great. We have a lot of great editor plugins. So good stuff. I like the ecosystem full of third-party libraries. We have Ruby on Rails kind of dominating, and everybody is a Rails developer, which kind of makes me sad, but also I realized that we probably wouldn't have been here without the success of Ruby on Rails. And for me, it is very important, what is the community behind a language? And I think that this was a topic we touched yesterday with several people on the speakers' dinner. Today, the language landscape is more crowded than ever before. Companies are pouring billions of dollars promoting the languages that they believe in, and that's fine. But what made Ruby special in the beginning wasn't some syntactic breakthroughs, some amazing VM behind it. It was the energy of the people. And this hasn't changed. Many people have retired from the Ruby community over the course of the years. People were saying every year, Ruby is dying, the end is near. Let's all switch to Rust, let's switch to Go, let's switch to TypeScript. But we are still here. The conference is celebrating its 10th anniversary, right? And Heroku, the 20th anniversary, Ruby, the 30th anniversary. So a community, a good community doesn't die easy. In the Emacs world, we know this. So even though there are some Ruby features that were introduced in recent years that I'm not fully excited about, I still like the overall result. But I'm not going to go into details now. I want us to do a fun game together. So we are going to grade the recent Ruby releases from a scale, on a scale from 1 to 5. Basically, if you really hate something, it's a 1. If you love something, it's a 5. if you can open your phones, or if you're the type of people who still can write with pen and paper, just follow along and let's see how many people have scored the recent Ruby innovation the same way as me. So we are going to start with Ruby 2.7 just because this is the first release that happened after my last visit to Verona, and my scores are in line. So pattern matching, okay, useful feature. I didn't really need it, and I don't think it fits a language like Ruby the same way it does a language like Haskell or OCaml, but I think it's a nice addition, 4 out of 5. Real keyword parameters. So I was very divided about this. On one hand, it's better than before. On the other, we are breaking backwards compatibility, and we are creating a lot of maintenance overhead. I remember how panicked people were when the warnings started about the final change in Ruby 3. Numbered block parameters. Oh, I was definitely not super excited about this because I told you, I like readability more than conciseness. Explicit, better than implicit. But, okay, I can live with this. Beginless range. I was kind of puzzled that people actually demanded this, but I don't hate it. I still pondered a lot, especially on the original syntax, how somebody believed that this code underneath is objectively better and clearer than the code above it. But I do realize that somebody was made happier. I am wondering if somebody was made happier from this snippet of code, though, other than code gophers. I know that in Japan, they have a very strong culture to compete to write the most unreadable yet ASCII visually pleasing programs. So I'm pretty sure that this is the real reason this feature was implemented. We continue. The big release. Full separation of keyword arguments. So more pain, more gain. I guess something like this. Raptors. People kept telling me for years that we needed this, yet I never needed it, so I was on the fence. But probably it's useful. Fibers. Same. Pattern matching is no longer experimental, good stuff. Endless methods, just as useless as beginless methods, but okay, we don't have beginless, but you know, we are making some weird shit. And gophers, remember this. Pretty sure that this came up immediately in Ruby Kaigi. Ruby 3.1. Now here it gets really interesting because I told you that hash syntaxes become progressively more, I don't know, exciting, for a lack of better word. I was also really surprised about the anonymous block argument syntax, like code gophing. And pattern matching gets improvements, good stuff. There is a lot of consistency. Anonymous method argument forwarding. I think this was a no-brainer in the most recent release. Better inspectable refinements. I still think that this is the one feature that almost nobody ever used, but I guess it's better to make it better. The data class fixed some long-standing issues of the old struct class, so good stuff. Maybe somebody is going to be using it now. Set is a built-in class. This is something that seems tiny, but it got me really excited because I think that almost nobody in the Ruby community used sets just because you had to require them. And we kept using arrays as sets, which is messed up on so many levels. So making progress, small steps. Per fiber storage, still don't need fibers, but I think that they needed the storage. More pattern matching improvements. I keep wondering how many improvements do we need there, but I think we are making progress. So I don't have the time to compare notes with you, but how many people scored exactly the same as me? Nobody. So I'm right. Happiness is individual. Humans are very weird beings. You give somebody stability and they're unhappy. Oh, there are no new features. And the same people are super excited when they get a lot of shiny new stuff. And there is always the other people, the grumpier bunch, too many features like, you ruined my life. This was so beautiful and now you made it ugly. They really hate the new stuff and the lack of new stuff makes them very happy. I used to be one of the first group. Now I'm one of the second one. I'm not sure if this is an age thing or I've acquired some life wisdom really. But I have something for you to ponder on. So Ruby is mostly an object-oriented language, supposedly as pure as they come. But it borrows a bit from functional programming. A lot of efforts were made in the early days of the Ruby community to promote Ruby as a spiritual successor of Lisp, as a language that was inspired by a lot of functional programming research. We were very proud for being a dynamically typed language. Duck typing was all the rage back in the day. And in recent years, we changed our tune and we want static typing. We want to emulate some other languages which had completely different values, completely different creed. So this leaves me a little bit puzzled. At the end of the day, what are we aiming for? Is Ruby just a Swiss Army knife, a multi-purpose tool that can get more or less everything done, even though there are some compromises, like obviously you can cut with this small knife, but you can cut better with a machete. Or DHH famously said, I believe around 2008, that Rails was an omakase. I hope I'm not butchering this. Basically, this is a dish that the chef prepared to their exact specification, and if you don't like it, you know nothing about food. It's perfect. The problem is in you. DHH also was telling us around 2007 that database constraints were a bad idea and nobody needed them. So I wouldn't take anything at face value. But still, I think that there was some wisdom in his words. And at the end of the day, I think that what Ruby is a la carte. Ruby is something that you have to make your own. And this is the recipe for success. There are bits of Ruby that you're probably going to like, love. There are bits of Ruby that you're going to dislike. But Ruby doesn't force you into using one specific style of programming, unlike many other languages. Like I know that, for instance, many people were put off by Haskell because they felt it's so weird to work with basic things like output in Haskell. Ruby tries to be practical. Okay, you know, we think that some things are probably a path better threaded, a path that is easier to follow, but you're free to go wild and do anything that you want. If you want, you can be as imperative if you want, as it makes you happy. You can try a more functional style of programming. Dynamic typing is the default and it served us well, but if you feel that this was a problem, now you have this option to incrementally add static typing to your programs. And I think that this philosophy made the introduction of the community style guides and Rubocop immensely painful in the Ruby community, because for the first few years, people were told that everything goes, and then we decided that maybe we need some common standards. A lot of the people who are attracted to the original culture, to the original promise, the land of the opportunities, were upset that somebody was trying to prescribe better approaches in a community that was famous for everything goes. I have been in so many discussions about what actually happiness, good style, and what not is in Ruby, that if I never hear Ruby style and single and double quotes for the rest of my life, this would be too much or too little, one of the two. So, at the end of the day, what is Ruby's creed? I think that Ruby's creed is to give you a language that is flexible enough that most programmers will be somewhat happy with it, because absolute happiness is a myth unless we're talking about text editors. And I think that when you have a language where the benevolent dictator for life actually listens to the community and tries to please everybody, because Matz could have been ignoring many of the requests for improvements, but you can see that the guy is really trying. All of the features that we've seen in the recent Ruby releases were things that have been discussed for years and years and years. There was a lot of deliberation over some, short regarding others, but I think it is really valuable to be part of such a community. I think that this is something worth celebrating because we as a community are winning. That's all I have for you, this time for real. And feedback is always welcome.
Anyone wants to share something or ask something? I mean, it's a philosophical talk, right? So you can have opinions. Anyone from the stream? Doesn't look like.
It's too late for philosophy, it seems.
Right? Right. No, but then I'll... Oh, there's a question over there. Yes. Wait, please.
Mm-hmm.
Languages offer. So
Yeah, that's true. Solar Graph was problematic for a while. I think this is what encouraged Shopify to step in and try to provide better tooling. I think we have to be very grateful that in our community we have actually a few companies that are willing to invest in development tooling, as this is I think this is the biggest difference between the commercially funded supposedly open source languages. Like, okay, Go in theory is open source, but in practice it's fully controlled by one company, and there are many such examples. So I think that Shopify's solution is better, but I also heard that they laid off a lot of people from the team working on development tooling. So I think that our dreams about a great LSP server will have to wait for a little bit. And this was also part of the reason that drove us to embed an LSP server in Rubocop itself, because for the function of linting and formatting, which I guess is the bare minimum that most people need, maybe you don't need a super complicated LSP server that constantly breaks and interrupts your workflow. But yeah, I think that more companies should probably collaborate on one project for the benefit of everybody in the community. I was also surprised that Shopify started this project. I'm not sure how much they tried to collaborate with Solar Graph, but you know, I always think that it's better to focus efforts into one project than to try to fork the community, given that our resources are not boundless.
Anyone else? Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you so very much.